we really appreciate your service as individual board members. I know it's not easy. I have sat on my HOA board for 8 years as a treasurer. Thank you for the wow. I did talk to somebody today on the phone who said he did it for 15 years and he's still there. And I'm like, what? Oh, yes. Here we got a 17. Do we have higher? 20? It's like an auction. We got 20. So we may have like a 30-year person in here, but we'll digress. So it is not an easy job being a volunteer board member, and there's a lot of misunderstanding that goes into the job, if you will, of a board member. And so what you're doing many times, as Hamlet talks about, it's worse sometimes than the slings and the arrows. So thank you again for everybody and your contribution. So as we get started, there's a couple of things I just want to mention. One is that FirstService Residential will be hosting 2 board member one-on-ones. I'm sorry, I'm getting all mixed up. Let me start over. Board member 101 events, and they are training for board members. Now, you do not have to be a new board member, and again, this is all relative. You may have been on the board for a month, or you may have been on the board for 10 years. This training may come in very valuable for you. If you are a FirstService residential client, you're welcome to attend. If you are somebody who's not currently working with FirstService Residential, you're also welcome to attend. The Monday, June 26th is when we will have the training event here for Board 101, and then the other one will be held at a property that we manage and has been generously lent to us that night from the Northern Terrace Board of Directors, who I can't seem to spot. Put your hands up. Okay, there we go.
Thank you.
It's a beautiful property. So if you are signed up for that one, it's on the northernmost part of town, then you are more than welcome to attend. Please RSVP to myself or Sylvia or Don Davis, or please feel free to email us. We still have some room available at both. But again, we would really love to have you there at 5:30, either at the Monday one or the Tuesday one. So if you didn't get all those details, I'm sorry. I'm a little probably low on sugar here. So let's get started. We are almost at the 6 o'clock mark, and I took a quick look at what Mr. Leach has planned for us tonight, and there's quite a bit. Those of you who had attended our Day at the Capitol event back in March, hopefully you felt as though that was a productive event. For those of you who may have heard about it, it was a productive event. There was a number of things that had gone on that day, a number of things that involved board members getting a chance to meet with their legislators and even being able to sit in on a session. And of course, that influence combined with some of the other things that have been going on in this industry are what's helping shape legislation in our industry and in the homeowners associations for Nevada. So without further ado, our guest is Mr. John Leach. He has been an attorney here in Nevada practicing for, I was told not to say the exact number of years.
30.
More than 10, less than 100, no, less than 40. Mr. Leach, though, is very well respected. Having used to run my own company and working with attorneys, when we were in doubt, there were a couple of times, I never told you this, that I was told by my business partners, maybe you should get John Leach on the phone. So he does know what he's talking about. So without further ado, please put your hands together for Mr. Leach.
You're always glad when they clap before you speak, because you know when you stop speaking, they're not going to clap. Anyway, it's really nice to be here with you guys, and I know Cameron stepped out, but I would hope that he would let Stephen Parker and all the folks at FSR know how much we appreciate them, not just for letting us have this facility, but I always say this is where it all began. It's kind of surprising to me. It just seems like yesterday we were meeting in groups here to talk about the legislative session, what our fears were, what our hopes were, what we thought might happen, and then how we were going to script and choreograph, how we were going to approach our legislators. I mean, that was just a few months ago, and here we are, the session's over, and no one's been harmed. It's amazing. This is a really good session, so I would hope that all of you that are from FSR that are still in the room, you'll make sure that Cameron and Stephen and everybody else know how much we appreciate FSR for doing these things. And I've got to share a little tidbit with you later, but a lot of the good things that happened this last session are because of you and to FSR is getting the ball rolling on this thing, so thank you for being here. Second, I need to introduce some folks to you. This is Attorney Ryan Reed in my office. Now, I know, they always say, no one likes to see lawyers walk into their office, right? Because you know that meter's running, you're going, oh my gosh, I hate to see these guys. You really hate to see him, because he's a litigator. He's handling all those foreclosure cases. He never sleeps now. He doesn't have time, because the case is just the volume. And I know most of you are familiar with all the collection cases. Well, Ryan is one of our senior folks in our office that spends a lot of time litigating those cases. I know some of you here know Ryan. You've spoken to him on the phone. Maybe you haven't seen him in person. He looks pretty good, doesn't he? He's a pretty good guy, right? All right.
Well, before I started here, I looked a lot better.
Yeah, that's true. I have no arguments. We all did. So I have no arguments with that. And this is Merlin Kalampong. Merlin has worked with me for 20 years, and so a long time. And bless her heart, she hasn't left me. When she decides to retire, I'm done. Because without her, I do not know what I would do. She's been so great just to work with me for about 20 years now. And like I can say, my law practice would be in a shambles if it wasn't for her. So most of you have spoken to her at one time or another. And Mother, isn't she good? She never lets you get to me, does she? She takes care of everything. She's amazing. So anyway, I wanted to introduce these folks to you so you at least know who they are.
And John was gracious enough to say that I could come, have my face seen, and then I could leave. But I did want to just say, just briefly, almost all of the things that we are dealing with and the things that John is addressing, we're dealing with the past problems with the legislation. And so this grassroots efforts and all of the efforts of the people in this room are greatly appreciated, because being informed, being involved, all help the community. It helps the lawyers, it helps bring clarity, and certainly you guys being informed on what's going on helps you and your associations, so you don't have to meet people like me, which is the ultimate goal here, which is to avoid meeting people like me. But anyways, I really appreciate, John, the kind introduction, and it was good putting some faces to names. And so with that, I'm going to go see my family.
This was a great session. I really don't know how else to describe this for you. NRS 116 was adopted in the 1991 legislative session, and every 2 years they've screwed it up a little bit more. And I've been involved with every session since the 1991. In 1991, I was an associate with Michael Buckley. Maybe you may know Mr. Buckley. He was on the Commission for Common Interest Communities. He was a partner in the firm, phenomenal lawyer, great man, and I think I learned from probably the best. And ever since that, every 2 years, my life has become miserable. And the last several sessions have been nothing short of torture. I really don't know how to explain it. The animosity, the hatred, the caustic nature of the hearings, you really didn't even want to be there. And it turned into where people weren't talking about legislation, they were talking about people. Let's deflect all the issues right now, and let's talk about this guy's not a good guy, or she's not a good legislator, he's got something wrong with him, rather than focusing on the legislation which was in front of them. So it's really troubling. And so this session, you know, and I remember telling people right after the 2015 session that the 2017 session had already begun, and the Superpriority was going to be under assault, and here are the flyers that are going out right now, and so put your seatbelt on because it's coming. And I don't think that was an exaggeration or anything else. But the fact that it never saw the light of day was shocking. So I got this email from Senator Harris. This was in March, so the session had been in for about 5 weeks. There was a bill that we thought could use some fine-tuning. And so as she was preparing on that bill, I sent her an email and said, hey, would you consider a proposed amendment? This kind of does this. This is her response. Your proposed amendment will open up the subject matter contained in SB 306 from last session. SB 306 is the Superpriority. SB 306 was a particularly contentious issue. I have asked other legislators about the amendment, and this was the sentence I love. There is currently no appetite to revisit pieces of SB 306 this session. So, which doesn't mean we won't have a fight on our hands in the future. But what was really nice is, once I got this, I thought I could kind of relax a little bit, at least on that issue, right? But, you know, there were still some interesting tidbits at the end. So, during the 120 days of the session here, a truce on the Superpriority lien, and we really found that there was much more bipartisan work this time around. The hearings were a lot less caustic, and it seems, especially in the HOA area. Now, but having said that, in the very last week of the session, all of a sudden, SB 258 came out, and it had some very damaging things in it. So, you probably got an email from me or someone forwarding an email that I sent to them, and I apologize to mess up your email, but it was really important because we could not have that bill passed. It would be a problem. So, because I had sent an explanation saying they're trying to pass an amendment that would allow delinquent owners to sue HOAs for foreclosing on unpaid assessments, and they were focusing on what we call the fair market value of the property. In other words, if you go to sell on a property worth $250,000 and the sale price is $10,000, then they could sue you because it was not a commercially reasonable sale. Well, commercial reasonableness is decided when you've got a willing buyer and a willing seller. But foreclosure sales are not that situation. And so this bill was going to be kind of bad. So I sent an email, and I know many of the organizations, CAI, NACM, I know Sarah Bear, if you're on any of those, you got bombarded with all these things, and I appreciate that. So after we sent that out, I thought you'd be, and this is my thanks to you. So Assemblyman Yeager, who was on the Assembly Committee, and who was the person who was kind of like the driving force behind this potential amendment, started getting responses from all of them. Thank you very much. His response was very short, to the point. Please make them stop. Please make them stop. We shut down the legislative website because they were getting so many emails. So, sincerely, thank you. Thank you so much for being responsive to those things. Your voice, I think, changed the course of SB 258. Now, Assemblyman Yeager didn't want to admit that. So he wrote a little love letter to one of my clients that I thought was pretty interesting. Let's see. He said, I don't understand why your general counsel would tell you something like that. Here it is. From Assemblyman Yeager to the board member. I'm not sure why your HOA general counsel would have sent you that inaccurate information. I can assure you that there were no plans to put any such language in SB 258. So then I got an email from another person up in the session that said he was well aware of it. He's the one who showed it to us, and he was the champion of that bill. So anyway, I only share that with you because there are always some little nuances that go on up there during the session that are never simple. Tonight, this is actually an abbreviated class. We're going to do a 3-hour course for community management credits in September and in October. But so I haven't attempted in this outline to give you every possible statute that might have some effect on association, although I've tried to identify them for you. So in the outline, what you have is first you have a list. This is on, let me just move over here. So these are the bills we're going to talk about tonight. And I know that looks like a long list, but I talk really fast. So we'll get through most of those, I'm pretty confident. And the most important ones are on the front end anyway. Then, we're not going to talk about these because we don't have time. And these aren't not going to have quite as direct impact. Now, some of them will, and a lot of them depend upon the kind of community you're in, condos versus... I do look better in the dark, so thank you. So these are other bills, but I thought I would at least give them to you so that if you were interested, you'd know. And I tried to give you the actual bill number and the kind of general subject matter of that bill. Now, I will tell you that when we do our 3-hour course, if you really want to torture yourself later, we will actually go through these in more detail. But for you tonight, I really want to touch on the bills and the provisions I think will have the greatest effect on you and your service as a board member, some of the decision making that you have to make. So we good? All right. The first one we're going to talk about is called the Service Members Civil Relief Act. Now, in case you're confused, there already is a federal statute that addresses this. And our foreclosures have been subject to that already. But this was probably one of the governor's most important or favorite subjects, was to protect the service members who are on active duty. So they've now adopted a Nevada statute that also affects our collection efforts in associations if the person, the owner, is a member in active duty, a service member. Now, so it protects active duty service members from foreclosures by lenders and by HOA. So it does not just us, the lenders can't foreclose either. But it also extends the protection to dependents of them. Now, it would be easy to see if one of the spouses was in Iran or Iraq and the other spouse is living in the house, how that dependent could be affected by the person's being overseas or being in active duty. What gets a little bit unclear is, what if a grandchild or a child, okay, where do you draw the line? It's an adult child, it's a 35-year-old child or a 30-year-old child whose father is still on active duty or something. How does that affect them? And there are some ways where we can get a court order to say that the person's service is not impacting their ability to deal with their mortgages or their HOA responsibilities. And please understand, this applies to debts that occur before they start active duty. If in the middle of that, somehow or another they refinance or somehow or another they buy a new house while they're on active duty, then it doesn't apply. And this applies just to obligations that existed when they went on active duty. So it's HOA and its debt collectors have to follow both the federal and the state law, and they're not identical. So here's kind of the general rule. An HOA may not initiate foreclosure during the period of time that the person is on active duty and for 1 year after they return. So it's that period of time. And so what does it mean, initiate foreclosure? This is one of the things we argued about, because in my opinion, we should be allowed to send the 60-day letter and ask for the information in that letter. They did not like my idea. So now it's, you cannot send the 60-day letter until you've done your due diligence with respect to that person, which means that every person in our association is now going to get a letter or some kind of communication inquiring if they are in active duty, and in so doing, soliciting information from them, and you'll see what that means. If you were to initiate foreclosure against a person who's in active duty, you'll probably be on channel 13. And you'll also commit a crime. And if you do that, then you're liable for the actual damages that are incurred. For example, if the person has to hire an attorney to defend against the action, then they could get those, recover that from you. If there's other things, that damages that the person incurs as a result of our action, then the association should be held accountable. Now, as I mentioned earlier, the association can seek relief in court, because the court can decide whether the service members or their dependents' service or their ability to pay assessments is not materially affected by the service. Because the idea here is these people are out there acting and serving on our behalf, our country, and we shouldn't be taking their property from them while they're doing that. Now, if a court says, yeah, but they're just taking advantage of this, they really could take care, then the court can order them to do that. But you're going to want that court order. You're not going to want to foreclose on that person. Now, so service member is defined, and on the left, that's the state. On the right, that's the federal thing. So in Nevada, you have to be a member of the military. And the military is defined as armed forces: Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine, Coast Guard. It also includes a reserve component thereof, so the reserves or the National Guard. Active duty is much broader than being deployed. Okay? In other words, that's obvious, right? The person's deployed overseas, that one, none of us would have any issue with that. But unfortunately, it's a little bit broader, which makes interpretation and enforcement a little more difficult. Full-time duty in the active military service, including any of those entities, is under a federal statute, but a soldier who works full-time at a local military base and comes home each night is considered to be on active duty. So, we're not, this isn't hopeless, but at least we have to make sure that we are aware of that, because we don't want to step in the trap. So, the association is required to, and this is kind of what you're going to be working with your management company to put into effect. And by the way, I think this law went into effect July 1. Or no, actually it went into effect when approved and signed. So it's already, this is already Nevada law, by the way. Okay? So an association is required to inform every owner of their protections and their rights if they are in active duty. And what you're to solicit from them is the social security number and the birth date. Now, they can choose to ignore you, can't they? They can choose to tell you, I don't like to give out my social security number. That's their prerogative, but, so they have to, their notice of their ability, their eligibility for these protections, and we're recommending two things. You know how you do your budget, and each year you mail out that budget, and we're supposed to also at that time send out your collection policy with that budget, right? We do that every year. Even if there's no change in the collection policy and that person's been in the house for 20 years, they get another version, another copy. Yippee, maybe they're wallpapering the house. You never know. So, you got to send that out. So here's another thing we're going to send. We're going to send that information request out all the time. Because a person may not be in active duty the entire time. They may be in active duty today, but not next week or next year. And so every year when we send that out, here's a way without additional expense for mailing costs to get that additional information. You can choose to do it at a different time. Okay? I'm just suggesting this is a way to keep your costs down, because when we start talking about some of the other changes in the law, you're going to see that one of the big issues was, help me save money. Make it more efficient for my HOAs. And you're going to see that they did that. So here's one way for us to do it. Prepare that document and ask for the information. So here's kind of the standard. So if we have to make a good faith effort to verify the person is entitled to the protections. Now, if they give it to us, I'm going to punch ahead here. If they give it to us, it's much easier, because I can punch in the information they give me, and I can find out through this website if they are in active duty. I can get information about it. The problem is not having that information. I don't have it, then as you can see, you know how they always say, these are required things. Well, that's the problem, is I can't put that in. I still might be able to search under a name, John Leach. And my father was John Leach. There might be other John Leach. So I could do this search. Who knows if I've got the right John Leach? But if I've got a birth date, a social security number, I can then at least get the right one to know if that person is in. So we have to make that good faith effort, right? To know if they've done it. If they give me the information, then the good faith effort is resolved by me plugging that information in, going to the website, and finding out what it says. If they don't give me that information, I still think you should make an effort to go to the website, punch in what you do know, and see if there's any way you can start finding out if there's someone out there. At least so we can show that we tried to do it. I even suggested to the legislature, and again, they don't like everything I think of, but I said, well, what about, why shouldn't they have to give us the information before we have an obligation to not pursue them? I mean, they've got the information, they can just give it to us. So we ask, they respond, we look it up, we verify or they're incorrect or whatever, and off we go. But they still want us to make a good faith effort to do it. So making a reasonable effort to give the owner the opportunity to provide the information. So, and again, keep in mind, this is supposed to all take place before the 60-day letter goes out. And that's the first letter, that's the first piece of the collection process. So before we even get started, we're supposed to do this. I know there's a few cams in here. Perfect. You guys get a head start. We got to put these forms together. We got to prepare the information, and then let's start doing this. Let's start figuring it out. Now, please, I mean, don't in most of your cases, this is not gonna be applicable. But my experience has been, I don't wanna be found liable once. I don't wanna make a mistake once. I don't like to learn from mistakes. I've done that in the past, I've got bruises to show, it's horrible. Let's just let's put these things together in advance and do what we can. So making a reasonable effort is important. So if we were ever sued by a person, we want to be able to show the dot to dot that we did. In case you're wondering, there are certain statutes of limitation that apply, and those are all told or held in abeyance during the period that they're in there. So statute of limitations is told throughout the active duty time period. A lien for unpaid assessments is, because the statute says, hey, your lien is extinguished if you don't do something within 3 years. Well, I can't do it if they're in active duty. So that period is stopped, and so you still have additional time to do that. Yes?
I got a question for you, John. In many condominiums, there are many people that are owners of the condominium, but they are renting the condominium. Imagine an owner of the condominium is renting the condominium and he's on active duty. Does that apply to him?
It does, because he's an owner, but that might be the type of case. And I don't know if you heard it. What if a person who is on active duty is leasing the unit? So he's not even living there, but he's leasing the unit, presumably is collecting rent on the unit. And I have still not seen a house in Las Vegas where the rent was less than the HOA assessments. Therefore, he's probably making money on that. So, but in that fact pattern, I'm still going to recommend that you be really careful. If you really want to go after him, I'm going to suggest we probably try to get a court order saying that his service is not affecting his ability to pay. He's got a tenant in there that's paying rent. He's got a property manager that's collecting the rent for him. There might be reasons to do it, but I do think it still applies. And so look, let's just say a service member, I'm sorry, go ahead. Yes.
Are you saying then we should change our collection policy totally to include this so there will be no possibility of mistakes in place?
That's a great question. Should we amend our collection policy to include this? I think the answer is yes, but coming from me, it's self-serving. Coming from you, it's a great idea. But for me, it sounds like I want you guys to pay me more money to fix your collection policies, but here's the reason why. If I'm ever sued, and they say, well, gee, what have you done? Well, first off, what we did, as soon as we learned about the law, we updated our collection policy to make sure that we were in compliance with the law. And then ever since then, we've been applying it. So it wouldn't hurt. If you chose not to amend your collection policy, I still think you can do it because you're really not changing the collection. Everything we're doing is before the collection starts, right? So if you choose not to, you probably are okay. But for my 2 cents, every piece of paper that we have, every evidence that we've done something to try and protect those rights or whatever, is a feather in our cap. It enhances the likelihood that we've done our due diligence. So I think it's a great suggestion.
And I'm looking at it just that way, that somebody can say, well, we never got that form with it, so if you have it in a complete document, it's fine.
Yeah, and yes, go ahead, Frank.
What about delinquencies? If we send them a letter that they're delinquent on an assessment, is that part of the process?
If you're sending them notice that they're late,
Yeah.
we're okay. We cannot make a demand for the unpaid balance, and the first notice is the 60-day letter. And we can't do that until we've done this.
Okay, but we could send for late delinquency a letter saying,
Hey, by the way, Mr. Leach, you're late, your
Yeah.
June payment's not right, the late fee's been added to your account. That's not a demand, that's information.
okay.
We're okay with that. So the practical effect of this is, let's just say we, make a mistake because we're human. And we find out that there is a service member on active duty that is in one of our associations, and we have in fact started the foreclosure process. I mean, we're gonna have to unwind the process and probably waive some of those fees and costs as part of the process so as to avoid liability, right? And again, most of it is, I know many of you, I can't say I know every single one of you, but I know almost all of you. And I know that it's out of the goodness of your heart that you even serve on these boards, and no one has a desire to intentionally violate the law. So all we're trying to do is show the steps we've taken so that a neutral person would say, yeah, they did make an effort to work like this. That's what we're looking for. Perfection never happens in this life. But we can be perfect in at least the steps we take in the reasonable nature we do things, okay? All right, next one is SB 195. SB 195 actually has 7 or 8 parts to it, and I've broken it into parts. The first part was an attempt to address a problem where association documents say something that the law doesn't. The law used to say, unless the governing documents provide that a vacancy on the board must be filled by the vote of the membership, the board can fill the vacancies. So in other words, that's basically saying you defer to the governing documents, right? So unless the documents say otherwise, the board can fill the vacancy, right? Now the law says, doesn't matter what your documents say, the board can fill the vacancy. Because we were having inconsistent treatment of this. Say, a person resigns from the board, then the board has the authority to fill the vacancy, again, either till the next election or the term, balance of term, whichever is shortest. So if I'm on a 2-year term, and I resign after 3 months, then the board can fill the vacancy till the next election, which is in 9 more months. And then at that election, the membership has to fill the vacancy by vote, and that's for 1 year. But what this was an attempt to do is there are many associations that had bylaws that said, well, if a person's removed, or if this occurs, then only by vote of the membership. And isn't that fun to do votes with the membership? And in those of you, I see several of you here in large associations, that is a huge expense. So the effort we were trying to accomplish here was, look, you already decided that if the document didn't say it, it was okay for us to fill the vacancy. So why can't we just all agree that it's less expensive and more efficient for us to let the board just fill the vacancy till the next election, and we go back to the members? And so they agreed. So that's what the first change was, uniformity in filling the vacancies on the board. And I think it's, again, the whole objective was fewer elections, that means less expense, from my perspective. Yes, sir.
Question, what constitutes a vacancy? My example would be midterm, the board votes to expand the number of board members. You create 2 additional seats.
Okay, if the board expands it, NRS 82 would allow the board to fill that vacancy. I would suggest that there is no vacancy until the first time it's been filled by the board, by the membership. Once it's been filled by the membership, then if there's a vacancy because of resignation, removal, I move out, whatever it is, then at that point, I think there's a vacancy. But I've got some good news. We're going to get to another issue of vacancy in just a minute. So keep that thought. Yes, sir.
Let's say you have a 5-person board and 3 people are either removed or resigned. You only have 2 left. Does that still go?
It does. The balance of the board, though less than a majority, can fill the vacancy. In fact, that was the law already under NRS 82, which is the Nonprofit Nevada Corporation Act. So yes. So now, the question was, if I have a 5-member board, 3 are either removed or they resign or whatnot, so you now have less than a quorum, you can fill that. In fact, I'd strongly recommend that since you want to have a board meeting, and 2's not enough, that the very first thing you're going to do at the next board meeting is fill the vacancy and at least get a quorum so you can go with the balance of the meeting. So yes, you're good. The next part, and this, I got to be honest with you guys, I'm sorry, but I'm really proud. The election by acclamation was really screwed up. You know what I'm talking about, right? Yeah. This goes back to not enough candidates, so there's vacancies on the board. So you have an election coming up. There's 5 positions, and 3 people's terms are up. So you send out that information, that call for nominees, your information statement, hey, you want to run for the board. And under the existing law, the old law, if at the closing of the prescribed time period, there was not enough candidates, what do you have to do? Send another letter out. Isn't that fun? So it postpones the election, incurs additional time and expense. Oh, it's wonderful. That's not what we were trying to achieve in the first instance. So we were having extra notices, extra mailing costs to address the fact that we had a little bit of apathy going on, right? Okay. So now it's changed. So now it says this: if at the closing of the prescribed period for nominations, and the law says not less than 30 days, right? You've got to give them a minimum of 30 days to respond. You can give a longer period of time, but the minimum, 30. So if at the closing of the prescribed period for nominations, the number of candidates nominated is less than or equal to the number that's that is vacancies or positions that are up, they're deemed elected at the next, what would be the next meeting. They're elected. You don't have to send out more notices. You can say that. I'm just kidding, no. So, I mean, to me, this really changes the landscape. So, the association does not have to prepare a ballot or mail it out another one, and the candidates are deemed elected to the board at the meeting of the owners at which the ballots would have been. So if we would open it, so it's basically the next meeting, they're deemed elected by acclamation. This should shorten the time period, it should eliminate expense, and make it go a little smoother. And then the best part other part is, if the number of candidates nominated is less than the number to be filled, the board may fill the remaining vacancies. So it goes back to your question about filling vacancies. Now I've got a 5-member board. There's 3 positions. Only 2 people put their name in. I'm 1 person shy. In the old days, we'd have to have another election. We couldn't appoint because there's no one to appoint. There's no vacancies. No one's been elected. Now it says we get to fill that remaining position again until the next election. So it's only for 1 year. I don't get to fill it for 2 years or 3 years. I get to at least appoint it till the next election. So again, the purpose of the key of, and oh, by the way, please, if you don't hear anything else tonight, please remember this. If you want to use this process, you do realize that the board, at a board meeting, has to decide in advance that you're going to use it. The law doesn't say election by acclamation is required. It says the board may, which is discretionary, which means it takes board action. And many in the industry continue to apply it, and the boards never voted to do it. Every single year, when you set the date and the schedule for the election, someone should, I make a motion that we implement the statutory election by acclamation process. I second it. All in favor, it's a discussion, all in favor, here, here. And off we go. Because if you don't use that process, then theoretically, you can't do an election by acclamation. You have to then send out the ballots and actually do the election, even if you don't have enough candidates. So please, board still must make a decision to implement acclamation before the requests go out. The statute specifically says before the nominations go out. Yes?
So it doesn't have to be in any of the CC&Rs or anything like that. It's just something that should be brought up when you start going into an election period. It should be brought up and voted on at a board meeting.
Absolutely correct. And please keep in mind that because most of the associations that you are working with or you're representing have been in existence for 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, this law didn't even exist then, so the bylaws, this is where you usually find this in the bylaws, would never have addressed this. So it is a statutory option. The law allows you to choose this. If you don't take action, though, then I think you're subject to the election process in your documents, which says you've got to mail it out. So don't do that. Yes,
You're
sir.
basically saying you have to make this selection by, use this process prior to mailing out for nominations.
Correct. In fact, if you're... Here's what the statute says. The first word is important. Before the secretary or other officers specified in the bylaws of the association causes notice to be given to the owners of their eligibility to serve as a member of the board may determine that they're going to use the process. So before anything's ever mailed out, the nomination forms, you must make a decision. You must act on it. So it says may do that. So please don't forget that. Yes, we'll come here and then here. Yes.
So this did not exist until before now, or what's the effective date of this?
October 1.
October 1?
October 1, this goes into effect. What was in effect in the past, there is already an election by acclamation process. It's just that you're required to send out a second notice if you don't have enough. That obligation will change. So if you could push your election till after October 1, cha-ching.
You have to do it each year, though. You have to redo that.
Theoretically, yes, or adopt a board resolution or something that specifically clarifies, henceforth and forever, this is what we're doing, would be good. There was a hand back here.
No, I was gonna ask the same question they just did.
Okay, excellent, excellent, excellent. Okay, so there's subsection 2, elections by acclamation. So the practical effect, again, is it revises the process. Fewer notices means less time and expense to associations. So again, I think this is a really good thing. It's something we've been lobbying for the last couple of sessions. We finally got it, so good. The next one is probably not too important for you, but I'm just going to share it with you. If there are any of the associations that you're with that are still under the developer control, great, and this might be applicable to you. When the economy went in the tank, there were many developers that also lost out, and they lost their interest in their property. So much so that the banks would foreclose on the property that had not yet been developed, and now the bank would own the property. And then just to complicate things, the FDIC would say the bank was defunct, and they would bring in a receiver to run the bank or to take over their assets, which would be that property. And if you think I'm kidding, no, I had several cases where we were litigating or in demand with Washington, D.C. as the receiver for the FDIC on payment of assessments. So it's a really weird scenario. But the problem is this. The law says that if the government, in the document of conveyance, so when you sell property to someone, that's a deed, right? I'm deeding you the property. Inside that deed are many important things, including not just the legal description of your property, but easement rights and other things that you're accepting as by virtue of your ownership. Well, the law currently says, hey, if you're going to convey special declarance rights, you've got to put it in the document that's being recorded. That's what the law said. So what was happening in all of these involuntary conveyances, bankruptcies, foreclosures, where they were losing the property, the entity that was foreclosing, or the bankruptcy court, they didn't address the issue. So when the deed was conveyed, it said nothing about the conveyance of special declarance rights. So now you have a person that owns the property, let's say it's a bank. They don't want to build, they want to sell, right? They want to sell to a builder. What do they give the builder? Everything that they have. They don't have special declarance rights because it wasn't in the deed that they got to have it. So now you've got a builder who wants to finish out the development and he has no special declarance rights to do that. That was a problem. So what we did now is we changed it. So this is the old statute. If the person acquiring title of the property, so the new law says, look, when we do this conveyance, you're getting all the special declarance rights unless you do something about it. In other words, they pass, even if it's not in the document. If the person acquiring title of the property, being foreclosed or sold, wants some, but not all of the special declarance rights, then it's upon them. They have to record a document that has it in it. So now the burden's on them to carve out the special declarance rights. The reason this became relevant for HOAs is, if a transition, the reserve account was not properly funded, you want to ask the developer to pony up the money. But if the person that bought the property had no special declarance rights, their argument was, we're not the declarant. Therefore, we don't have to fund your reserve account. You don't have any rights and remedies against us. So at least in this now if we were to have a downfall and these properties are lost, the special declarance rights pass, which, believe me, is much better for everybody concerned. The fourth part of it is elections contemporaneous with annual meetings. This one could be a bit of a problem. This might be the worst part of the entire session, so if this is the worst part, it was a good session. The law now requires that at the annual meeting of the membership, you're going to be opening the ballots. See, in the old provision, you could have your annual meeting in February, your election in November, or maybe in June, and your budget ratification in November. That's 3 different membership meetings. Now what we were trying to do is get all the stars to line up, do them all on one night, and not have to keep fighting over how many more meetings and notices we've got to give. So the theory behind this, again, behind it was consolidates the membership actions or meetings so that the number of notices, mailings, and meetings is reduced. This is not to say that this is necessarily going to work and be easy. Because if your practice right now is you have those on 2 different dates, we're going to have to try to consolidate those going forward. And we know that we can't extend board members' terms, so that might mean that some board members somewhere might see that their 2-year term got converted to 1 year and 8 months, or 1 year and 9 months, because I've got to have the annual meeting on the same date, and I can't push it off to another year to give that 2-year term, can't be 2 years and 9 months, so I might have to move that up. So if this is the worst thing that probably happened, is trying to get all of us to structure our meeting schedule so that they line up like that. Many associations were already having their elections at their annual meeting, but some were not, so this is going to be a problem for them.
All right, so do you have to have, just to be picky, you have to have opening the annual meeting, and then say, at this time, we're counting ballots? In other words, you have to have an actual, we've come to order, we have a quorum, let's get going. In other words, what we did is at 4 o'clock, we did counting of the ballots, 6 o'clock, we had a meeting, the annual meeting. But do we have to actually officially start the meeting and state it that way in our notice?
Yeah, but let's say you're a huge association and you want to try to find a way to adjust this.
Yeah.
Call the meeting to order.
Right.
Start the tally, and then say, we'll be back to you tonight at 6 o'clock.
That's all we have to do.
When we start. So I mean, there's more than one way to do it, but the idea is on that one event. But I like your thought. That's exactly what we want to do to keep the cost down. Okay.
Have to convene the annual meeting.
Number 5. Now, this is another one that I kind of like. I've always been frustrated with the notice requirement for executive sessions. It's always bothered me that we have to mail notice to someone and say, we're having a meeting and you can't come. I've never understood the methodology behind the expense. I mean, I understood the transparency, everything. Okay, all right, I can buy that argument. But so let's spend hundreds or thousands of dollars to make sure that you can go to bed at night and sleep better because you know they're having the meeting. But you can't come. So this bill does 2 things. It says first, now I know where it says, so no matter, notwithstanding any other provision of the law or the governing documents, if the board holds a meeting limited exclusively to paragraph C or D. C and D, that's the hearings and the construction pending. So if the only reason you're meeting is to have the hearings for the homeowners who might be in violation, the association is required to give notice only to the person who may be subject to the hearing. Good?
Yeah.
So there's 5 meetings, there's 5 people in violation, we send 5 letters, we have the meeting, we're good. Those are the only people that need to have notice of the meeting. We will account for it in a minute here, but we're going to have the meeting. But if we're having it for other reasons, we're going to meet with the lawyer to discuss pending or threatened litigation. We're going to meet with employees or people to discuss job performance, salary, all those kinds of things, how you're doing and forth, right? So it's anything that's not C and D. Then the notice is changed, but it's not quite as good, but in this case, you would then post notice of your executive session. That's easy. You find a couple of places in your community, maybe if you have a clubhouse or mailboxes where maybe you have general circulation, you post the notice and you would email it to those who have given you electronic notice, who have given you their email addresses. So you would make a group, I guess, email, attach the attachment, boom, out it goes. Now, it doesn't change. Please note, you notice how it doesn't say it's 10 days notice or whatnot. If you have an emergency executive session, you can still have it in an hour. Just post the notices and go have your meeting. It depends on what the circumstances are. So if you have any concerns about it, talk to your attorney to make sure you're dotting your I's and crossing your T's. But you can still, so the idea of this again was to stop this nonsense of we're having a meeting, you can't come. It's to say, so we're going to have, so now we've given notice. Either we don't give notice because it's hearings, or we post notice and we send emails to those that have given us their email address. So the practical effect is this should result in less expense and allows executive sessions to be conducted when necessary rather than always in conjunction with your board meeting. Let's just say you happen to be a board who meets every 3 months. Or he says not less than 100 days, that one. So you meet every 3 months. But after your March meeting, in about 3 weeks, all of a sudden there's a bunch of problems and you need to have executive session. You don't have to have a full-blown board meeting. You just do your executive session, you send letters to the people that might be, and off you go, you have your meeting. And then what you're gonna do is, in the next section, is you're gonna report. So this is subsection 6 of the new bill. It says, if the board does hold one of those meetings where they don't do the notice to the people, then at the next regularly scheduled meeting of the board will acknowledge that they've had the meeting in accordance with those limited parameters. By the way, folks, a month ago or 3 weeks ago, we had an executive session to meet with homeowners regarding delinquencies and alleged violations. We're not telling them any names, right? We're just telling them that we met. So we acknowledge that in the meeting, and we make sure that the minutes, that's where our management is going to help us a lot, we make sure the minutes reflect that we made that acknowledgement in the meeting. So now, there's your transparency. They know we had the meeting, and we're telling them about it. But we didn't have to notice them, which hopefully will save us time and expense. Okay?
When does that take effect?
October 1. Yes?
Doesn't that also protect the privacy of the people? Let's say they've got some serious issues that you're calling somebody in for an immediate hearing, you decide to do it. It's a privacy issue too, because we've actually at times felt that there were people looking to see who was coming to those hearings.
Did you hear that? Isn't there also a privacy issue? I think the answer is yes, and I share in your concern. If you have your executive session the night of the meeting, or of your board meeting, your open board meeting, and you either do it before or after. If you do it before, the best part about that is it's over before the meeting starts. But can you imagine if you're one of the people that are in there for a hearing, and you have to wait till the end of the meeting, so you're sitting around waiting for someone to come in, or for the meeting, and everyone else is leaving and they see you staying, that means you're there for a hearing. And we're supposed to keep things confidential. So there is that nice, delicate balance between transparency and confidentiality. At least now, I think it resolves that problem for the associations that don't have their executive sessions on the same night as their board meetings. And please, I'm not trying to sell how you do it. Whatever you do is fine. I'm just saying, here's a methodology that allows you to not have to give notice to everybody for the executive session, and that, to me, is a good thing. Okay? Yes?
Since you don't have to record executive sessions, do you have to have the manager there?
If you don't have to record the executive session, you need to have a manager there. Well, I'm kind of biased, okay? My opinion is the reason you have a manager is to help you, and I would always have them there. That's my recommendation. But if for some reason that you don't want them there, I mean, you do not have to have them there. The law doesn't say that a community manager must attend the hearing. It's a board meeting, executive session. Board can decide who is in the meeting. You got to let the other side have their attorney. You got to let them have a witness if they want. So, but if you don't want manager there, I'd say you can do that. But again, I'm just going to tell you that from my experience, that's why you have the managers, to hopefully serve as the intermediary and to be able to do some letters and stuff. So.
It's just that sometimes if we go over 2 hours, we have to charge
Oh, the expense involved. So that tells you need to go faster. You need to take my speech class. If you go to my class, you'll be done. You'll cut 30 minutes off your meeting just like that. I guarantee it. I have a 1-800 number to call in and you'll get a Just kidding. Again, the point being expense. So again, this is where management and you need to work together, because look, one thing I want to tell you about your managers, community managers, they have a life. You wouldn't believe it. I mean, as much as you expect of them, you probably, well, they're always available to me. They're on 24/7. I hate to start a rumor. Some of them actually have families. And they actually have things to do. So it's a good thing for them to be able to go home. So they do charge you more because they want you to kick it into gear to get the things done. So if you see a night where you're going to have a particularly long night, then let's just do our best to get through it as quickly as we can. It's really hard to, I mean, I don't go to as many meetings now because I'm surrounded by all these great lawyers at my office. But I can tell you that I know what it's like to spend 3 and 4 nights a week till 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock at night, because that's how my law practice started. Every night, a board meeting. Some were fun, some not so fun, so let them go home, but that's a good point. Number 7, quite frankly, this is simply codifying what the law should have been already. So we thank the legislature for acknowledging that you should have directors and officers insurance. If you're hearing this for the first time from me, I am sorry. In fact, I always told board members, if they would listen to me, if you're on a board and there's no D&O insurance, resign immediately. It's not worth it. Because the whole idea of directors and officers insurance is to shield you from personal liability if, by chance, something goes wrong. And heaven help us, we're human, and I don't know about you, but I made a mistake. I make one every day. So the problem is we don't want to have liability. I mean, what, you're going to balance the liability with the compensation you're getting? Wow, we need to check, right? So you don't get paid, but you can lose everything you own. Wow, that's a great formula. So the directors and officers now is mandated to have coverage. And here's the kicker, and I'm anxious to speak to my insurance friends, because look at the coverage. It says the director's office insurance and what the nonprofit corporation errors and omissions policy of not less than $1 million, naming the association as the owner and the named insured. But watch what happens. The coverage must extend to the board, officers, employees, agents, directors, volunteers, and what? Community managers. We got them with agents anyway. But the scope of this insurance is supposed to cover all those. Now let me give you the fact pattern as to why this is significant. You all love those lawsuits, the foreclosure lawsuits. I know you love those. So let's just say that in one case that they sue the association and the manager. And the association tenders the defense of its case to the insurer, and the insurer says, gotcha, we're covered. And then you say, oh, by the way, in our management agreement, we've agreed to indemnify and defend our community manager within the scope of the contract. They're suing him for performance of the job. We're tendering the defense of the management companies, the defense to you as well. And they say, no, we're not going to cover you. So that means the association is now paying for the defense of the management company, but they're covered for their insurance on their case. I've never seen a board like that. I've never seen a management company enjoy it. So this suggests that now the D&O coverage should be expanded to cover. Now, Mark Kuhlman and some of the great guys in the industry, those folks out there that we think are wonderful guys, they're going to have to probably address this issue because there's a clause at the beginning that says it has to be reasonably available. I don't know what the insurance company's going to do with this, but this much we do know. Your board needs to have D&O insurance to be in compliance with the law. There's a minimum dollar amount, and let's hope that there's availability to get this other coverage. Yes, sir.
I know the opportunities for this insurance shrunk last year. CAA will not offer anything in that area. They used to. In other words, I think there's 2 companies, and it's too bad this doesn't force anybody that wants to insure an HOA to offer that.
I don't know if you heard that, but the gentleman made a really good comment that there are many insurance companies right now who are now including exceptions to coverage or exemptions for cases involving HOA foreclosures. Okay, that's now being exempted. And I've run into a couple of cases recently where a new case was filed. Now the case went clear back to 2013 or 2014. But the insurance is a claims-made policy, claims being made now, 2017, and there's an exemption for that coverage in the policy today. So that is a problem for HOAs going forward. But the best news is, if we can just get through all the cases that occurred before October 1 of 2015, we're going to be okay. Yes?
You answered my question.
Oh, got lucky. Yes.
Who pays if the real estate division, I think it fines a board member $10,000? They say they can do that.
Oh, well, they have the authority. Actually, the limit on a board member is less than that. But as a general rule, they put the burden on the person because if you're doing it in the scope of your authority and they don't find that your conduct was what they call willful or wanton, gross negligence, that kind of thing, then the association can. But if it is, you personally did something. Now, there's going to be some hearings, June 27th to June 29th is the next real estate division gathering, and there's going to be some hearings there. But again, if you as a board member punch somebody in the nose, that's not within the scope of your authority. You really don't do that. So if that's not covered, and then the division says, yes, there's an unprofessional act or whatever, and they hit you with a fine, they could make you bear that. But the law says right now that an association has a duty to indemnify and defend a board member until it's proven that that board member acted with willful or wanton misfeasance or gross negligence. So it doesn't really change anything. Just don't punch anyone out as a board member, just be cool, calm, and collected. Yes, sir.
Question on this insurance, actually, because of this confusion of HOA foreclosing, I've seen the insurance go up 4 times for this insurance rate. So I guess my concern is they keep saying, until there's clarity in the law, the HOA could foreclose and kick out the banks, because the banks are coming back and fighting. Should the HOA foreclose or say, hey, wait a minute, we should get clarity before this is done?
So we already have the clarity. The law came October 1 of 2015 when it kicked in. You should be foreclosing with as much speed as you can. Because right now, yes, because right now the law is drafted so favorably for the bank that the bank has 2 safety nets. One, they can pay the super priority balance before you foreclose, or they can exercise the right of redemption after the HOA forecloses to protect their interests. There's no reason to postpone your sales. The law is now very clear. We know what the super priority is. Yes, there's cases that are already in the pipeline that we can't do anything about. But as far as going forward now, think about this. If you have a $3,000 obligation and the bank comes in and pays you a super priority of $1,400, so now you're only owed $1,600, but you're still owed and you can still foreclose. The sooner you get the sale, the better, because the lower the dollar amount, the more likely an investor is going to come in and buy that property. The investors are still buying, and this is their gamble. I bet I can buy that property and lease it and make more rental income before the bank forecloses on its mortgage. That's the risk. But if the dollar amount is high, they're not going to come in and put in $40,000 and hope they can make $1,000 a month for the next 40 months. But if it's if they have to bid $2,500 and they think they can lease it for 6 months at $1,000 a month, they just doubled their investment. Are you kidding? So it's important that if you have any concerns about that issue, because that's really not what tonight's about. I don't know if I'm your attorney. I'd love to talk to you. If not, get your attorney to sit down with you and explain. The laws are pretty clear right now.
Okay, if the laws are pretty clear like that, how come the insurance are coming back and raising the rate so much?
Because they've been sued in the last 3 years by about hundreds and hundreds of times. And insurance rates always change based upon claims made. So they're talking about this stuff that's in the hopper. But if you look, in fact, I challenge you to go back and look at the dates of the foreclosure sales of the cases you're dealing with in your association. There will not be one after October 1 of 2015. And I assure you that we are still foreclosing on properties today. It's because the law changed and there's clarity. Okay?
John?
Yes.
John, on the D&O insurance, used to state that it covered both current and past officers. Has this changed any?
No. No, you still should. If you're sued at a time when you were in your capacity as a member of the board, there's cover. HOA has a duty to cover you. Okay. The last one from SB 195, and it kind of clarifies something about your ability to enforce fines for violations on a public street, right? Public street, okay? There's already a statute that says that, look, we're not going to tow from a public street, right? All right. But the law says, so it amends the statute, the governing documents of an association may authorize a board to impose a fine for any violation of the rules pursuant to, and it gives you a statute, right? That statute says the provisions do not preclude an association from adopting and setting forth rules that restrict parking or storage of, and here's important, recreational vehicles, watercraft, trailers, or commercial vehicles in the common interest community. Now, so if you live in a community and you have public streets, so you're not a gated community, right? These are public streets, and if your CCNRs have restrictions on parking, you can enforce those. You can't tow. You should never tow from a public street. You let the public, you ask the municipality to do that. But you can impose fines for those violations, assuming it's one of those types of vehicles. RVs, watercraft, trips. Because what's happening is, a person brings a big old RV in there and sits it on the street for 3 months, and it's a problem. If it's just a day they're coming in to load up and leave, no big. But what was happening is, these types of things were being parked on the street for extended periods of time, and board was saying, well, I guess we can't do anything. Well, this clarifies that, yes, you may. Okay? Yes.
To the extent authorized by law, is that state law, city law?
All of the above.
Do we have to have a city law before we can do this?
No. This just says look, you have the right to do it pursuant to your governing documents. If the law prohibits something, you can. But this specific is a law, and it says, after giving you the general rule about enforcement on public streets, it then says this. But the restriction against prohibition on public streets, because that's the subsection 1, it doesn't prevent an association from enforcing those types of vehicles. So you can do that if it's on a public street. Yes?
Point of clarification, because you just mentioned that if it's a gated community, then it's not public streets.
Can't be.
So, but if you're still within your condominium complex and you've got streets, you don't have any public, street signs or anything. But if it's open, it's considered public streets.
No.
I'm just,
No. If you're behind a gate, it's called private streets.
if you're behind a gate.
Right.
But if you don't have gates.
Correct.
Doesn't matter how your community's
Then
laid
it's-
out.
Then it's essentially public. I have seen a few where they actually are referred to as private streets. So I'd look at your plat map, and I'd see how they called out the street on your plat map. But in a condominium association, most of those areas are defined as common areas anyway. So you have the right to address parking in common areas. This statute probably won't apply to your fact pattern because of the condominium nature of your housing. Yes?
John, how do you enforce this?
Notice, hearing, fines.
Against whom?
Who's the owner?
A stranger or a member. Now I have a fine levied against a member that I can't do anything with, literally.
Why?
What am I gonna do, bring him into court?
Well, it depends how much the fine is, whether it warrants other action, but if it's a sizable amount of fine, I'm gonna lien their property, and then if that doesn't work, I'm gonna take it to court. I'm gonna do an NRED complaint for the money damages and pursue that. Now, it's a fact that there could be a situation where a person parks a vehicle not in front of their house. But I have to presume that the person that's living there must know something about it. So I start my hearing process with that person, and I find out if there's somebody else involved, I can shift my focus to another person. But I still have the right to do that. And look, most fines are not health, safety, welfare violations. Some are, most are not. If it was a health, safety, welfare violation and the parking of that RV blocks the street, or blocks something, then the fines can be larger, right? And you could then lien and foreclose. But you still have the right to pursue a money judgment. If the person's living there and not going anywhere, then if you got a money judgment against the person, you can garnish wages, you can attach accounts, and we've had that happen. Just recently had to bring an action against the family and got about an $8,000 judgment, and then started taking money out of their account. The reason we knew where their account was because management had a copy of the check where they banked. Went down there, said thank you very much, took the money out of that account, and then started garnishing her wages. So if you want to get serious about the problem, you have remedies. They may not be fun for everybody, but it depends how serious you consider the problem to be. Yes.
John, we are not a gated community.
Yep.
But our streets are private.
Okay.
Does this apply in a situation like that too?
Let me go back. The statute itself, which I didn't put up there because I had limited space, says this. In a common interest community which is not gated or enclosed, and the access is not restricted or controlled by a person or device, the board shall not, and the governing documents must not, provide for the regulation of any road, street, alley, or thoroughfare. The right-of-way is accepted by the state. Private streets are not accepted by the state, so this doesn't apply.
So now tell me in my language what that really means.
I don't speak that, no, I'm just kidding, no.
That makes it mutual.
I know, I'm saying. It just means that this statute is not gonna apply to your fact pattern. If you have private streets, it's not a street or thoroughfare that's been taken over or accepted by the city. On the plat maps, if you will take a look at a plat map for your community, you will see on there the designation as private or public streets, and it usually has a very, very brief, and you better get a magnifying glass to read it, but you'll have a description of how that applies, okay? Let's move on, because this next one is, if you're in a condominium, yes, sir.
When it was saying you can find our owners, does that mean owners of the vehicles? Because we have a problem where other people outside our community park within our community. They park semi-trucks. They're not even residents or owners in our
So
community.
the question is, people that don't reside in the community are coming into the community with semi-trailers?
Yes.
And parking on the public streets inside your community?
Is it gated?
So when this says owners, is it talking about the owners of the housing property or owners of the
Well,
vehicles?
theoretically, it's always been the owners of the property, because that's who we deal with, or are members of our association. A person who doesn't reside there, I would think the municipality should be very interested in their parking of RV or semi-trailers on those properties. Have you spoken to the municipality and they just blown you off?
Yeah. They never come out when the semis are there. They only come out very limited times, so it's very hard to catch them. They only come out 3 days a week in the mornings.
By then they've gone.
Yeah.
Must be Henderson.
They usually park them there over the weekends, and there's nobody issuing them.
Take a picture, get the license plate, and we'll see what we can do. That'd be kind of fun. Of course, another thing you might do is just get some graffiti and paint their thing and pay them back. And have all the kids in the neighborhood get sticks and keep the guy up all night, banging on his truck.
It's illegal to put a sticker that says you are parking in front of my house, you don't belong here, whatever it is. They put it there, they have to get a knife.
If you don't have, my theory is if you don't have the right to take the action, I wouldn't put the sticker there. That's just how I feel. Okay, we really got to cruise, folks.
If you're in a community that has public streets, in the CCNRs, it says you can't park on the public streets, it's in the garage, in the driveway. And we haven't enforced it, can we start?
If you have CCNRs that say you can't park on the public streets, but we haven't enforced it, can we start enforcing it? The answer is yes. But what you would do is you send out some kind of communication to all your homeowners explaining, here's the rule, we haven't done in the past, commencing like 90 days from now, we're going to start giving them a period of time to adjust, and then you can start enforcing again. Okay. This is a huge win for HOAs and condominiums. This bill allows associations to enter condominiums that are vacant to do several important things. Currently, under the abatement, there were 2 times you could go into someone's unit. One is it's vacant, and the other one is, although it's not vacant, the bank has started to foreclose. Those were the 2 times when you could go to the outside of the unit, fix it, charge the owner, and treat that expense as a super priority, which means you're going to get paid. That's sweet. Well, this is now changed to say we're going to go a step further. Because what was happening in condominiums, water leaks were destroying buildings. And you get a person who's gone and that water runs. You learn about it. So now if a unit is in a condominium and the unit's vacant, either the association or someone on its behalf can enter the inside of the unit to do the following things. Abate a water or sewage leak. Stop it. Stop the sewage leak. Stop the water leak. Then, after, please notice, that was out without notice to the owner. It's vacant. It's an emergency. Get in. Then after you get in, stop it. Send notice to the owner in accordance with the hearing notices, it says, after providing the owner with notice, but before the hearing, you don't have to wait till the hearing, send them a letter, and then go back and remove any furniture, fixtures, drywall, anything that is wet. Because wet in Las Vegas this time of the year means it turns a $2,000 fix into an $80,000 mess. So now you can go in, stop the leak, remove the things that are wet, including baseboards, drywall, anything, furniture, fixtures. You can remove it, and you can remediate or remove any mold or water damage. See? So if there's water, I had a flood in the cabin I have, and you need to remove the drywall, you can take it out. Now please note that the term remediate does not mean restore.
Right.
So what we're trying to do is stop the bleeding. We stop the water, we remove the things that are wet, and we remove the baseboards, the whatever that could have mold in it. We're done. You don't have to go back in and put everything in. But the glory of this provision is that after we do all these things, after the association has provided the owner with notice and then that hearing, you can assess it to the property, and after you do that, glory be, it's part of the super priority. Which means, when the bank does get around to it, if that's what happens, the person's gone, you're going to get paid on that part of the expense. For condominiums, this is a huge win, a huge get for condos. Yes?
Are you gonna have to maintain, that property you're removing in some kind of a rental facility so it doesn't get stolen or whatever?
To what?
You're going to have to put that property that you remove, personal property, furniture, things like this, into some kind of a storage?
Do you have to
facility?
store the personal property that's been damaged and has mold on it and probably has no value? Probably not.
I think he's talking
But
about
if-
the furniture.
Right,
stuff,
but if the furniture, if you've got furniture or fixtures that are just wet, and there's no mold, sure, store it, notify the person in Nevada, it's a 30-day provision. Once the 30 days lapse, it's called abandoned property, and then you can sell it, you can give it away, you can toss it. So yes, you would probably want to be careful with that. But again, for the big expense, this is a good thing. Yes?
If an upper unit breaks a water heater, leaks into a unit which breaks the floor downstairs, the obligation, of course, is their insurance and all that stuff upstairs. I understand that. What about downstairs? Is there a common area considered the floor in between?
I really can't answer your question without reading your specific CC&Rs, because the answer to that question is, it depends. And it depends on how the documents are drafted, it depends on what the definition of a unit is to know where the common area exists, but there is a possible common area element to that. The problem is, the current law with respect to insurance is that in a condominium complex, an association is going to insure the entire unit. Not the contents, but the structure of the unit. So there's a conflict there, but the practical effect of this is, we're going to be able to get the repair, stop the bleeding, get the mold out of there, get the wet out of there, and get the recovery eventually if this property forecloses. If we don't, or from the homeowner, homeowner's insurance, or from the bank. We're going to get reimbursed. That's the key to me, is wanting to make sure you get your money back. So, okay. Okay, these last several we're going to go through are going to be kind of short and sweet, and I apologize for that. No one's going to have to listen any more than we've already done, so we're going to try to hurry. This first statute is about electronic delivery of documents. Okay, the current law says that certain things have to be delivered, hand-delivered or mailed. And legislation, the laws always lag way behind technology. Nowadays, most of you people don't even have phones. Not one in your house, you've got your cell phone. A lot of people don't even send letters anymore. They text or email or whatever. There's all this other stuff out there, Twitter and all that. I'm not into any of that stuff. I'm on no social media, and I'm not into that. But a lot of people are, and that's how they communicate. Right? So they're changing the law to now say that the notice has to be delivered. And then the section that talks about delivery allows for electronic delivery. So now there are many things, and this is changes to resale disclosure information statements and delivery of certain document change. So what do you mean by a document change? Amendments, CC&Rs, rules and regs, any of those things get changed, we used to have to mail it all out, not now. Now, if I've got that email address, I can send it by electronic mail, I'm gonna save myself a little bit of expense. That starts, I think that's July 1.
Do we need written permission?
Resolutions and everything.
It's just talking about document changes, so I would say your rules and regulation amendments, your CC&R amendments, bylaws amendments. I don't know, I guess I'd probably try resolutions that way. I don't know why not. It doesn't hurt. If the person's gonna say, yes, I got a copy of the amended CC&Rs, but you also sent me the resolution, but since you sent it to me the wrong way, I must not have got it. I don't know, so. But this also is true on resale. You're selling the house, right? You're required, you know that disclosure that says you're buying in a Nazi concentration camp? You read that one, right? It's that one in there that says, it's horrible living in an HOA, that disclaimer? Okay, that can now be sent. You need to amend your documents now because now you've got to tell them that the prospective purchaser, that the purchaser can deliver notice of cancellation by email. So it has to be in there. So if you're sending out a form that's outdated, you need to amend that form to include that they can do the cancellation. So we put on here that management should update the statement in the resale package to make sure that it's accurate. Anyway, so make sure that it's up to date. This goes into effect July the 1st. Most of the things are October 1, but this one goes July 1. Next.
In all these electronic sending of things.
Yes.
We can document that we sent it. Homeowner says, I never got it. Even though they give us the email address, they tell us where to send it, we send it. Okay, where's our liability?
None. The question was, if we send it and they don't get it, where's our liability? We have just as much problem with USPS. I can mail a letter and someone doesn't get it.
Right.
So, look, you should in fact, maybe whoever the person is that's going to hit the send button there, would have a list of the people that they sent it to. And unless you get an email back says it wasn't delivered for some reason, then I think you can conclude that it was sent. The fact they don't open it, it's their problem, not yours. You just do the best you can. Right? Yes, sir.
There are programs such as Superpriority and all that, that you get that back that it has been opened.
Yeah, did you hear that? There are some programs that actually will tell you that it's been opened or delivered or read or something. Yes, sir.
Also, always make sure you copy yourself, or whoever is doing the emailing. You also make sure you copy yourself, so that way you get it delivered, and then, because also it would have the addresses of everybody who you emailed it out to.
Very, very good advice. Okay, the next one has to do with pre-hearing violations. Many of us, we all have those on occasion. And there was already a requirement that you send a photograph of if the alleged violation has to do like with the physical condition of the property. So it's something you could take a photograph of. Now, look, we're not going to be taking some photographs of certain things, especially if there's children. You don't take pictures of kids because they'll think you're a pervert. So there's things you don't do, right? Okay, but this says if it has to do with the physical condition of the property, we're supposed to take a photograph. So this does not require courtesy notices or first violation notices. It simply says that if you do send pre-hearing notices, which could be courtesy notices, but if you do that, then you need to send a photograph of the alleged violation. Here's the you send the photograph, you specify the violation in detail, you cite the provision of the governing documents allegedly violated, and you include the cure, a reasonable time to respond. Now, to me, this hasn't changed a thing, except you might be sending that photograph a little sooner than you were in the past. So it might be a little bit more time-consuming, but once again, it seems like most of these things fall in the lap of management, which they end up having to drive around, take all the photographs, and so they get stuck with this. But the key is, if we send those pre-notices, make sure if it's a physical condition that we're doing. We have found, by the way, one of the reasons they did this is people would always come and say, well, it's not my property, or that's not the condition of my property, that wasn't my house, or I already fixed it. You'll take a picture. Oh, okay. I'll quit lying. You've got proof now. So we have found that these photographs do end up getting people to actually fix things sometimes before you have the hearing. And that's a good thing, because that's all we really want. Okay. When there is a tax sale on property, person doesn't pay their real estate taxes, and there is a sale of property. HOAs in the past were never listed as parties entitled to recover. And now it's changed. Now, if there is a real estate sale, forcing the sale of a home, and there are surplus proceeds from that sale, then you stack the parties up like you're on, air traffic control in priority and decide where does that money go. Where's the association fit?
Not on the list. Superpriority first.
Thank you. At the very top of the list, at least with respect to the super priority portion. We have a split claim. Part of our claim is before the bank. Part of our claim is after the bank. So we're probably only going to get the super priority, because they're not going to get that much of the sale. But we should be able to get something. Now, please look at this. If the HOA recovers excess proceeds, so we submit a claim, we get something, the HOA must forego collecting any amount remaining after that. Now, let's be honest. You're not doing it anyway. We're not collecting that money anyway. So all we're saying is this says you can't go after the deficiency. We're owed $4,500. We receive $1,200. There's $3,300 deficiency. We've got to just write it off. If we get that $1,200. If we don't get the $1,200, we don't have to write it off. But my experience has been, if they already lost the house, the likelihood of recovering something is not great. So it's probably not a good idea to throw good money after bad, right? Okay, so that's a positive. So any common, and it also redefined if there's any common expense benefiting fewer than all the owners, that expense gets added to that owner's unit, and that would include if you paid taxes for somebody or their utility bills for someone, that now gets added to their account. I thought that was already the law, but apparently if it wasn't, it's now been clarified. If there was any uncertainty, it's been clarified. Here's towing of unregistered vehicles. Now this is important because please note this is very narrow. Okay? It applies to condos and townhouses. The rest of you guys can take a 2-minute break. Condos and townhouses. It does not apply to single-family home communities or condos and townhouses where everybody has a garage. If you have a garage, it just doesn't apply. We're going to tow, because we're not going to tow from someone's garage. I hope you're not doing that. You're on this chat after this. So you may not tow a vehicle if the vehicle is owned by a resident and the registration is not more than 60 days past due. So you can't tow solely for lack of registration unless the registration, and it's a resident, someone lives there, unless it's 60 days past due. Now, unfortunately, if your semi-trailer wasn't registered, there's no registration, you could tow them right away. Because it says, may tow unregistered vehicle if the owner is not a resident. But unfortunately, it doesn't give us much help. But I was looking for any silver lining in the thing. So anyway, so you cannot tow a resident's vehicle unless it's 60 plus days that has been registered. But if it's a non-resident, you can tow right away. Which begs the question, how the hell do you know? I'm sorry. Anyway, so this is a problem the association might need to institute some type of a decal or sticker system or something so you can identify resident versus non-resident and put the onus on the person to have that in their vehicle. If it's not, then you treat it as a non-resident vehicle. But, like anything else, folks, this is strictly for unregistered. It does not address, you can still continue to tow for other parking violations. And if it's a immediate one, they're blocking a fire hydrant, they're in a red zone, any of those types of things, you can tow immediately. That law is not changed by virtue of this bill. And again, we talked about stickers, and again, the 48-hour notice, we should still implement that process. And make sure that if you're using a tow car operator now, make sure that their notices that they post are now consistent with this statute with respect to unregistered vehicles. This one's pretty basic. We have a commission for common interest communities and condominium hotels. It's a 7-member commission. We're now just clarifying that certain people who are on the commission must actually reside in a unit in the state. I couldn't imagine someone wanting to live in Michigan and serve on our commission, but who knows? There's not enough stuff going to the Wolverine state. I don't know. Anyway, I think, yeah, this is the last one. When we taught this class 2 years ago, we told everyone that the foreclosure mediation program that existed in the state of Nevada, there was a sunset provision, which meant it was going to go away. The sunset provision was June 30th, 2017. You had to be in the program, I think it was by December the 1st of 2016, in order for it to run its course. But then at the end of June 2017, the program would go away. Well, they revived it. They gave it mouth to mouth, and they resuscitated the thing, and so it's alive and well. But they have transferred the jurisdiction, if you will, or jurisdiction from the Nevada Supreme Court to a non-profit company called Home Means Nevada. Now, I am a native Nevadan. Would anyone like to join me in singing Home Means Nevada, Home Means Nevada, Home means the sage and the pine? See, you guys are terrible. Out by the Truckee Silvery River, out where the sun always shines. I'm just kidding. Anyway, there's a company called Home Means Nevada, and they are going to supervise or control this provision, this program now. I suppose the sense is, now that the housing crisis has been slightly alleviated, must be, because there's all kinds of houses being built around the state, so there must be things must be going well, that they're going to shift this. So this really doesn't change much for HOAs. We still cannot foreclose on a unit while it's in the foreclosure mediation program, unless the owner fails to pay assessments to become due during the period, which is always. How many of you have ever had a guy who's in foreclosure with the bank say, I'm going to pay you for the next 6 months? It never happened. Therefore, this really isn't as big of an impediment as you might think. But anyway, this section also allows for electronic notice of certain things. If authorized by the parties, the HOA may deliver the 60-day letter, the notice of delinquent assessment, and the notice of default by electronic transmission. That is shocking. But that's what it says. Now, please note, it doesn't say the notice of sale can be done that way, because you've got to publish and post the notice of sale in a newspaper, so it doesn't work to just do electronic. So there. So it does not apply to the notice of sale, and does not apply to copies which must be sent to other lien holders. For example, if I'm going to have to send notice to all the creditors, I still have to mail it out the same way I have always been doing it. That doesn't change. So again, you need to review your email authorization to see what you have. Yes, ma'am.
When does this take effect?
Good question. I didn't put it up there, so I'm guessing October 1, but I will look right this very instant. It's law now. It became the law. It says, this act becomes effective on passage and approval, and it's passed and approved. It is the law. There you have it. Anyway, listen. Yes, sir. We can't do this. I am on a, no, Steve.
Do you have any information to share about the proposed changes to the community pools?
No, not yet.
Oh.
Not yet. I'm sure we will soon, but not yet. I apologize. Yes, sir.
With all of the advancement in electronic transmission and delivery, is it advisable to do some kind of resolution
No, look, if you're going to use email transmission for anything, the only way you can do that is if the person authorizes it. Therefore, what you might do is adopt a resolution that, to the extent that owners authorize you to communicate with them in that way, you will do it. But you cannot compel. You know, my mother passed away recently. She was in her mid-80s, and to her, email and text messaging was foreign stuff. So you can't just adopt email notice. You have to make sure that the person agrees to it. Okay? Yes.
Question a little bit off topic. Private streets in an HOA, somebody parks in your driveway.
Private streets, HOA, someone parks in whose driveway?
My driveway.
In your
No,
driveway?
it's my driveway.
Okay. HOA cannot tow from your driveway, but you can. And there's a new law going into effect really soon. We didn't discuss it tonight, but it's going to be more clear on your ability to get someone out of your driveway. No one has the right to be in your driveway.
No, they're not in the driveway.
Oh.
They're on the street blocking the driveway.
That's no different. That to me would be a health, safety, welfare risk, because if you couldn't get out of your house and there was a problem, you needed to get to the hospital and they're blocking it, that's health, safety, welfare. Okay, just a couple. Can we get those questions after, because there's some people who really don't want to look at me any longer. Here's a thought. I really do, if I could walk around to each one of you, look you in the eye, and say thank you very much, not just for being here, but for what you represent and for what you do in your associations, I would do it. If there was any way for me to personally thank every one of you for the help that you gave us during the legislative session, I would do it. I have found that lawyers are worthless during the legislative session. No matter how much we go in and talk and testify and write all the gobbledygook, they care more about what you think than what we think. So when you responded to the call to tell this stuff to the assemblymen and senators that could harm associations, you answered the call. You changed the direction of the law. You are responsible for this being a successful session. I know there is nothing in your life other than being a parent that is taken for granted more than that. And even your kids, once they have kids, come back and say, I am so sorry. I thought you were a moron. Now I realize how smart you really are. But no one does that for board members. This type of product doesn't work without you. You are truly servants. You are serving your fellow man in a way that many people can't appreciate, but we adore you. Thank you for what you do. Hope it's worth your while. And take one for the road, because I am not that hungry. Thank you, everyone.